So, greetings, and it's a wonderful thing to come together in community, even in the many varied places that we are today, and to come together for a common purpose and for common exploration is a wonderful thing, and I thank you for being here. And the theme for this meditation could be called samadhi, often translated as concentration. But one of the ways I translate samadhi is unification. And the word samadhi, the etymology of it could mean gathering together, coming together of things. And there's a long tradition that meditation is a time to unify all the disparate parts of ourselves. And we begin most broadly in unifying body and mind. Our body is always in the present moment. Our mind is always in the present moment as well, but it's not where our focus is. The mind's preoccupation can be with the past, with the future, with fantasy, with things that are happening in other places right now. And the mind often is not really here and now in the same place as the body. And in meditation, we're bringing them together, and it's really the task of bringing the mind to the body, and so unifying or harmonizing these two. And rather than being oppositional to anything happens, or maybe even getting rid of something or feeling distraught at what we're experiencing here, the process of unification maybe is represented by the expression, and we can tell ourselves, this too will be included. This too will be included in the awareness. And so what's the field for unification is the awareness. It doesn't mean that we think everything is good and wonderful. We can have thoughts which are kind of deleterious. But there's an art to not opposing them in meditation, but including them in such a way that this too is included without believing them or picking them up or pushing them away. If there's pain, there's an art to including this. This too has to be included, as opposed to tensing against it and struggling against it. Now this process of unification, of course, needs to be done wisely. We're not expected to sit and meditate with things which are harmful and to ourselves. But that's the direction, is the bringing together, harmonizing, unifying, gathering together. And so you might, on this sitting that we're doing, use the phrase, this too, as opposed to, not this, oh no. This too I can hold in awareness. This too is recognized and known. And sometimes it just takes a few moments to recognize and know something. And then it doesn't have to necessarily go away. It might be fine to let it recede to the periphery. It can be in the part of the whole, on the edges. And we go to the center. And perhaps your center can be the breathing. The breathing that is at the center of all things, that holds all things, that breathes through all things, that supports the mind to be in the present moment, and supports the mind to not wander off too easily, because it's rooted, it's anchored in the breathing and in the body. So to take a posture, and one of the expressions around postures is to compose yourself around a posture that is holistic. Compose yourself in your meditation posture. Maybe spend some time kind of moving around, wiggling a little bit, swaying a little bit, and kind of finding a balance upon which to be composed in the body. And because the eyes, if they're open, easily pull into thinking and looking at things that pull us away, it's a long tradition of closing the eyes when we meditate. Partly so the inner eyes can be focused here and now in this body. And then to begin this process of unifying the mind and body, give it with direction, with instructions from your mind. Let your body breathe deeply, taking some deep inhales and long exhales. And this the directedness, this instructions from the mind to the body, to do something consciously this way is the beginning of this process of bringing together the mind and the body. So a reminder to the mind, there is a body here. Let's stay here and feel it and know it. And as you let go, as you exhale, relax into your body. And part of the unification process is to unify the whole body. So the whole body wakes up. And that's a process. You don't have to do it right away. But we're letting awareness tune into the vitality of the living body. And letting your breathing return to normal. And for the next few exhales, to continue to bring the mind into the domain of the body. Every exhale, see if you can let go of your thoughts. And as you let go of them, to settle more into your body. Let go into your body. And then to be simple and relaxed, aware of the body breathing, letting the body breathe itself, and the mind gives itself instruction. Instructions to the mind is rest gently, tenderly with the breathing, with the body breathing. And whatever happens as we're sitting here that takes you away from the breathing, no matter what it is, you might say to yourself, this too is included. And a good way to make this a process of unification is whatever takes you away from the breathing, as you recognize it, see if you can feel how it feels in your body. How does the body experience this thing? If it's sound, how's that heard in the ears? If it's thinking that's strong enough, how does that feel? How does that felt in your body and your muscles and the energetics, agitation of your mind? If it's an emotion, where does it live in your body? Referring everything to the body is a part of the unification process. And the more you can be in your body, to include all things, the easier it is for awareness to also include all things within it peacefully, with no opposition, just being aware, with no picking anything up, just being aware. Aware in a unified field of body and mind. To say this too is to include your experience in a way that is opening at the same time it is as it is quieting. Quieting the thinking mind. As the awareness becomes more inclusive, more open, the awareness is more sensitive. Saying this too, and then being very quiet, so you better feel and experience what you've opened up to. Appreciating this quiet, attentive, inclusive way of being. And what is it that you can include? What is it that you can say this too, that you're ignoring, that would help you feel more unified, more complete, more inclusive in a way that allows you to settle. This too has space here. One way of talking about unification, this too is included, is that the practice is making room to hold everything, to make room for everything in our hearts. This heart that can hold and attend to and care for without necessarily acting or believing or condoning everything, but it can hold everything in its embrace. And as we come to the end of this sitting, may this movement towards unification, towards inclusion, mean that we aspire to hold everyone in our hearts. To unify the whole world in the care and kindness, friendliness of our hearts. Our hearts do have room for everyone. And it's easier to do so if you've made room for everything about yourself, so that anger and frustration and greed and disappointment don't close the heart down, but rather all those, when they occur, we make room for them too. And the greater the room, the more our freedom and peace will be. And the greater the gift we have to the world. It's a wonderful thing for people to know that we include them in our good wishes and our hearts, that we don't banish anyone. At least in our hearts we're willing to be present and open and friendly to anyone. Our minds might have some wisdom about that, how to do that effectively and safely. But may it be, as we end this meditation, that we aspire to have room for everyone in our hearts. And in doing so, to wish for the welfare and happiness of all beings that can only be realized when we come together in a kind of unity, of goodwill. May it be that our goodwill and inclusive hearts promotes the welfare and happiness of all beings, May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be free. So continuing on the topic of right speaking, right speech, I want to step back a little bit to emphasize the continuity of these factors of the Eightfold Path, starting with right view or right viewing. And one of the, as I've been saying now repeatedly, that one of the components of right view is to appreciate the consequences of our actions. And this is a fascinating and a very important issue, that something inside of us registers the impact that our actions have, the impacts they have on other people, the impact they have on us. And so in the teachings of the Buddha, consequences of actions are hugely important. And this is a little bit obscured in the Dharma teachings that kind of come out of the United States and Europe, where for our own philosophical reasons, history and what, we've picked up on intention as being really important. For the Buddha, surprisingly, given how much we teach it, that's the case. Intention isn't that important for him. It's difficult to dig deep down and find that's the case. What's much more important for him is the consequences, which in modern language is impact. We can have, if we rely and rest in our intention, we can then overlook the impact. Or we could have an intention and not care about the means, how we get to the goal of the intention, because the goal of the intention is more valuable than the means. But if we're interested in consequence and impact, then every step along the way we're taking in, we're registering the impact we have. And so if what we want is world peace, but we approach that with hostility, maybe we can clear away the playing field of the people who we don't like so there can be peace. But to feel the impact that has on us and on them, the people who get cleared off the field, it's painful. It kind of tears at the fabric of the heart if we're sensitive, if we're present. And we are social beings, and our connection, our empathy, our resonance with other people actually counts a lot for the individual. And this is one of the surprises for me that I discovered in my early years of meditation, that as the meditation kind of tenderized, softened, opened me, took off the armor that I carried and the fear that was between me and the world, that I felt much more attuned and sensitive to what was happening in the world around me, both directly and also indirectly, and much more sensitive to the impact that I have on other people. And so this idea of impact then, or consequences, becomes very important. And so we learn then that the impact of greed, the impact of hostility, and the impact often of delusion is not beneficial, and it causes harm to others and to ourselves. And to begin to not to be moralistic around greed, hatred, and delusion, but rather to be sensitive around it, so that of course we don't want to harm ourselves or harm others by acting out of especially greed and hatred. And so to recognize the difference between doing those things which are motivated by greed, hatred, and delusion, or actually with right consideration, the second one, those things that involve addiction to sensual pleasure, ill will, and cruelty that correspond to greed, hatred, and delusion. And be more attuned and more considerate, more considering those things that are involved in non-addiction to sensual pleasure, renunciation of that kind of pursuit, non-ill will, friendliness, and non-cruelty, compassion. That's how we're considering things. We're looking at things, and so we go about our life. We're asking ourselves, is this wise consideration? Is it right consideration? And now we're applying it to our speech. And speech has a huge impact. And the second factor, in the list of right speech that the Buddha gives, the first being speaking the truth, the second one is avoiding speaking words that divide people. Sometimes it's translated into English as slander. So not speaking divisively. And rather speaking words that bring concord, unification, bring people together. So why would we do that? I think it goes back to this idea of the way that consequences, we're attuned to them, we're interested in them, makes a difference to us. Whether we cause harm, whether we create divisions between people, and because it affects other people, which kind of affects us, but also we are changed for the worse when we do slander or do divisive speech that really put people at odds to each other. And this doesn't have to be just through words. Not speaking can be divisive. Not speaking up to make a difference. Not saying anything sometimes enables falsehoods to continue. Not speaking sometimes allows for divisiveness continues and more suffering. And so the movement here is to what does speech look like when it's not motivated by greed, hatred, and delusion? When it's not motivated by addiction to sensual pleasure, ill will, and cruelty? What does it look like? And one of the ways it looks like is that it's interested in unification, concord, unifying. And the Buddha talked about this kind of speech as speech which unifies those who are divided and maintains or supports the unity of those who are already unified. And it's to delight in concord. It's to cherish concord. And this is how we speak. So how do we do that? How do you speak about people behind their backs? Do you speak in ways that divisive, slanderous, that if they heard what you said, they'd feel hurt? If you could track the trajectory or the consequences of your speech, would it be that 2-3 generations away from that conversation, down other people hear the same news, same idea, that it comes back and bites the person there you're talking about, that they wouldn't be happy about it, and it actually makes their life more difficult? Or do you talk behind people's backs and say things which are unifying, that people say, oh, they're happy to see that person next time they see them. They're happy to figure out a way to work together. And so it's fascinating that how much emphasis the Buddha emphasized concord or social unity. And he encouraged his followers to, with acts of body, acts of speech, and acts of the mind, how we think about things and how we view the world around us, to do so with an eye for creating concord, creating unification, an eye for creating a community of human beings that care for each other, that support each other, that are friendly to each other. And it's easy to have this as an ideal. It's much more challenging to maintain that principle and talk this way when other people are talking with hostility, other people are divisive. And so what are the skillful ways to step towards that, to begin healing that divide? Or to say it more simplistically, maybe simply, sometimes more to what we can do, is how not to put fuel on the flames of that divide, how not to participate in further dividing, how not to, get imbued or take on the divisiveness other people have, and then just contribute to more and more of it. And I think that meditation practice makes a huge difference in this regard. To learn in meditation how to be open, relaxed, sensitive, we really become attuned to consequences and impact. Really get attuned. It makes a difference for us because of the empathy thing. It makes a difference for us, the impact of our words and what's going on in the world around us. And can the impact we have be one that disarms people, that opens people, that predisposes them to look upon us and others in a friendly way? Can we be forces of bringing people together? And that's certainly my wish for Buddhism in this country, that Buddhism somehow is a bridge builder. Buddhism is a force that doesn't exactly take sides, but rather is more interested in bridging people together, bringing people together, so we all can be in the table together and find our common good, find our commonality. As naive or simplistic as that might seem sometimes, I believe in it. I believe that it's possible to have an inclusive heart that leaves no one out, that we never turn our backs towards anyone, that we never maintain and hold on to our resentments, our hurts in such a way that we banish people from our hearts, that we always are ready in a wise and safe and appropriate way to be inclusive and step forward and say, this person too I will meet. I don't agree with what the person's saying, I don't agree with what the person is doing, but this too I will meet. This person I will relate to in a friendly way. And if the person is too complicated and difficult and maybe even dangerous to do it overtly, at least we can do it in our hearts privately, so that no one is left out of our hearts. So finally, what we see here is that this central teachings of the Buddha, the Eightfold Path, is right at the heart of it, is a social teaching, is a teaching about how we live our lives in the world and how we relate to other people. That this is really, really important for the Buddhist path. And this is a path to liberation. And that path to liberation is completely inclusive of our social relationships and caring for them and unifying them. It's hard to be free spiritually if we are living divisively. Maybe impossible. So may you consider over the next 24 hours how your speech, and sometimes your silence, how your speech can support unification, support concord, that people can come together with respect for each other, with friendliness, with sympathy for each other. How can you speak in that way? And how can you avoid, maybe for the next 24 hours, run the experiment and try to, as best you can, even if you break out in a sweat, to avoid saying things which are divisive, or which, if a person you're talking about could hear what you said, would feel hurt or upset. Don't say anything divisive or anything negative. See if you can do that for one day, and instead say words that are unifying and support others to kind of open their hearts and be unifying. Run the experiment. See what that's like. And for one day, it's probably a worthwhile thing to do. Thank you.